My wife slept with my brother in her mother's house. That sentence alone feels like it should never exist in reality, yet it is the sentence that burned itself into my life, branding me with shame and rage I can never wash away. I should start by telling you who I am, though sometimes I feel like even my name has been erased from the person I used to be. My name is Min. I'm 35 years old, and I work in a mid-level position at a construction company. Nothing remarkable about me, an ordinary man who dreamed of a stable family, of building something permanent and secure. And for a while, it seemed I had that. I had a wife I thought I loved, a brother I trusted, and a family that others envied for its closeness. We lived in the same city, not far from my mother's house, where we all grew up. My brother, Hui, was always the charming one, the one who could make people laugh, the one who walked into a room and drew every eye without even trying. I was different, quieter, the kind of man who worked hard in silence, who thought loyalty meant more than words. And my wife, Lan, was the woman who once made me believe I was lucky, that maybe, despite my quietness, I was worth being chosen. On the surface, our marriage looked happy. Friends admired how Lan took care of me, how she smiled beside me at gatherings, how my mother-in-law often praised me as the ideal son-in-law. My mother, proud and warm, treated Lan as her own daughter. And when Lan and I walked into her family home, it was always filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the warmth of tradition. But life has a way of planting poison in the soil long before you notice the roots breaking through the ground. At first, it was subtle, so subtle I brushed it off. Lan would spend more evenings at her mother's house than usual, claiming she was helping with chores or keeping her mother company. She'd come home late, her phone clutched tightly in her hand, her face glowing faintly from the screen. When I asked, she'd smile and say she was just chatting with her cousins. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But there was something in her eyes, a flicker of guilt, a hesitation in her laughter that struck me, though I buried it under trust. Then there was Hui, my younger brother. He started showing up at Lan's mother's house more often too. At first, it made sense. Our families were close, he was always the social one, and maybe he wanted to help out. But the coincidences began to pile up. Every time Lan mentioned she'd be at her mother's, Hui was there. Every time I visited, I noticed his shoes by the door. He'd greet me with that same careless grin, his voice full of jokes, as though nothing was wrong. Still, the seed of unease grew in me, quietly, in the shadows of my mind. The moment that truly shifted something inside me happened late one evening. I came home early from work, tired, but relieved to escape the endless paperwork. The house was empty, dim, quiet, in that unsettling way when silence feels heavier than sound. I sat down at the table and noticed Lan's phone, left behind for once. That alone was unusual. She carried it everywhere like a lifeline. I told myself not to look. I told myself that trust meant not crossing that line. But my hands moved on their own, trembling as though they already knew what they would find. The phone wasn't locked. The first message glared at me from the top of the screen. I can't wait to see you again. Last night was unforgettable. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped and my hands went cold. I scrolled, my vision blurring, my breath catching in my throat. The words were intimate, playful, dripping with affection that should have been mine. Words that cut deeper than any knife. And then, in the middle of that storm of betrayal, one message froze me completely. Your mother's house feels like ours now. I love the risk. It makes it sweeter. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened until I thought I might collapse. Her mother's house. The place where we celebrated holidays, where our families gathered, where traditions lived. The house that was supposed to be sacred. The walls of my home felt like they were closing in. My wife, my brother, in her mother's house. I put the phone down carefully, as though it might explode. My reflection in the dark screen looked like a stranger, hollow, trembling, broken. That night, I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Instead, I sat awake in the living room, the glow of the clock mocking me with each passing hour. I waited for her footsteps, for the door to creak, for the moment she'd come home smiling like nothing was wrong. And when she did, when she kissed my cheek and said she was tired from helping her mother, I nearly vomited from the stench of her lie. But I said nothing, not yet. Because in that moment, through the crushing weight of betrayal, a single thought began to form in my mind. A thought colder than my grief, sharper than my rage. If they thought they could play me for a fool, if they thought they could bury me under their lies, then they had forgotten one thing. I may have been the quiet one, but I was not weak. And quietly, in the shadows of that night, I decided I would make them pay. The morning after discovering those messages, I sat at the table staring at my coffee, letting it grow cold in my hands. Lon bustled around the kitchen as if nothing were wrong, humming softly under her breath, her hair tied back, the picture of a devoted wife. I watched her, every movement suddenly foreign to me. The way she laughed, the way she avoided my eyes, the way her phone was now clutched tighter than ever. It all felt staged, rehearsed, like a performance meant to keep me blind. But I wasn't blind anymore. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone at her and demand answers, but the words stuck like shards in my throat. Instead, I swallowed my rage and let silence eat at me. A silence she never seemed to notice, or perhaps pretended not to. Over the next few days, the signs multiplied. She spent more nights at her mother's house, claiming her mother's health was fragile and she needed the support. Each excuse was carefully wrapped, perfectly believable to anyone else. But to me, it was poison disguised as kindness. She handled her phone like it was a newborn child, always face down on the table, always tucked away the moment I walked in the room. She would smile faintly at the screen, then quickly switch to a frown when I appeared.
Once, I caught her whispering on a call in the bedroom, her voice low and trembling, and when I stepped in, she jumped as though I'd caught her in the act. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice too calm to be natural. She blinked, her lips twitching before she forced a smile. "Just a cousin. You know how gossip travels in the family." A cousin? Always a cousin. Always family. The irony nearly choked me. At night, she rolled to the far side of the bed, her body stiff, her back to me. When I touched her shoulder, she flinched. When I tried to talk, she claimed exhaustion. The intimacy that once connected us was now replaced by a cold wall, a void I couldn't cross. I started noticing the smallest things, her perfume lingering when she returned late, the faintest trace of cologne that wasn't mine clinging to her clothes, the subtle way her smile seemed brighter when she looked at her phone than when she looked at me. And then there were slips of the tongue. Once she muttered a name in her sleep. Hui, my brother's name, spoken like a caress, soft and yearning. I froze in the dark, my blood turning to ice. I lay awake beside her, staring into the ceiling, every breath burning in my chest. But still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because doubt is a dangerous thing. It eats at you, corrodes your soul. I wanted certainty. I wanted proof that no excuse, no denial, no fabricated story could erase. So, I began watching. I studied her patterns. I noticed when she left, how long she stayed at her mother's, how often Hui's car was parked suspiciously close by. I listened carefully when she spoke, dissecting every word, every pause, every smile. And the more I paid attention, the more the truth screamed at me from behind her lies. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. One evening, as she showered, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I hesitated, my heart pounding in my throat, then reached for it with trembling hands. The screen lit up with a message. Tomorrow, same time, same place. I miss you already. I nearly dropped the phone. Same place, same time? My mind raced. Was it her mother's house? Was it somewhere else? The ambiguity drove me mad. When she stepped out of the bathroom, steam curling around her, she caught me staring at her phone. For a split second, her expression faltered, panic flashing across her face before she masked it with a playful smile. "Spying on me now?" she teased, wrapping the towel around herself. I forced a laugh, though my hands clenched into fists beneath the table. "Just wondering why your cousins text you so much." She shrugged, too quickly. "Family keeps me busy. You should be grateful I'm close to them." Grateful. That word almost made me laugh out loud. That night, I barely slept. My mind churned, replaying every message, every glance, every strange coincidence. The image of my brother's grin haunted me, merging with the words I'd read, the whispers I'd heard. I wanted to believe I was paranoid, that my mind was twisting shadows into monsters. But deep down, I knew. The next day, I decided to follow her. I waited until she announced she was going to her mother's again, kissed me on the cheek, and left with her usual calm. I counted to 50, then slipped out the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. I kept my distance, my eyes locked on her car as it weaved through the streets. My palms were slick on the steering wheel, my breath shallow. Every second felt like a drumbeat, leading me towards something I wasn't ready to face. Finally, she pulled up outside her house. My chest tightened as I watched her step out, her phone pressed to her ear, her lips curved in a secret smile. She disappeared inside, closing the door behind her. Minutes later, another car arrived, a car I knew too well. Hui stepped out, casual, carefree, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his face lit with the same grin. I gripped the wheel so hard, my knuckles turned white. There it was, the truth, dressed in daylight, unfolding before my eyes. But still, I didn't storm in, not yet, because watching them walk into that house together, a different kind of thought crept into me, a colder thought. If I waited, if I planned carefully, if I let them dig their own grave deep enough, then, when the time came, I wouldn't just confront them, I would destroy them. The day I saw Hui walk into my mother-in-law's house behind Lan, I thought the worst of my suspicions had been confirmed. But sometimes, the truth doesn't crush you. It eats you slowly, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but rage. That night, Lan came home late. Her face was flushed, her hair slightly undone, but she carried a bag of fruit as if she'd truly been tending to her mother. She kissed me on the cheek like she always did, her lips soft, her voice sweet. "Mother says hello," she whispered. And in that moment, I wanted to strangle her with those very words. I stayed silent. I smiled. But inside, I was boiling. The next few days, I started keeping track of everything. I saved receipts I found in her purse, receipts from restaurants we'd never gone to together, dated on nights she swore she was at Mother's. I checked the mileage on her car and realized it didn't match the distance from our home to her mother's house. Sometimes it was higher,
much higher. I even hacked into her email, and there, tucked between boring newsletters and shopping discounts, were confirmation letters from hotels in the city, short stays, booked under her name, once even under Hui's. I couldn't sleep. Every night I lay awake in the dark, my chest heavy, my head pounding. I'd close my eyes, and the images would come. Lan and Hui in those hotel rooms, whispering the same lies into each other's ears that they whispered to me. I'd imagine her hands on him, her laughter filling the walls, her eyes glowing the way they once glowed only for me. Anger consumed me like fire, but fear lived right beside it. Fear that maybe I wasn't enough of a man to stop it. Fear that if I confronted them too soon, they'd twist the story, turn the blame, and make me the madman instead. One night, I couldn't hold it anymore. She was scrolling on her phone, smiling faintly. I stared at her until she noticed. "What are you looking at?" she asked, her tone too casual. "Who's Hui to you?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Her smile froze. Her hand tightened around the phone. "Your brother? What kind of question is that?" "Answer me," I said, louder now, my heart slamming in my chest. "Why do you say his name in your sleep?"
Why is his car always at your mother's house? Her face turned pale, then red, then stone. She slammed the phone down and glared at me. "You sick," she hissed. "Paranoid, always imagining things. Do you think I don't have enough stress already?" I wanted to shout back, to throw the hotel receipts in her face, but I held them back. I had no desire to end it with her denial. I wanted her confession, and I wanted it in front of everyone. So I let her storm off, her anger burning hotter than mine. And in that silence, I made a vow. If she wanted to play this game, I would play it better. The following week, my suspicions grew into certainties. Midnight calls that ended the moment I walked into the room. New lingerie tucked secretly at the bottom of her drawer, tags still attached, waiting for a man who wasn't me. A chain of messages I saw flash across her screen, one reading, "I can't stop thinking about last night. Your touch drives me insane." I wanted to break the phone right there. I wanted to drag her by the hair and force her to admit it. But no, not yet. Because if there's one thing more powerful than anger, it's patience. The cracks began to spread beyond just me. My mother, sharp-eyed as always, asked me why Lon avoided family dinners. My younger sister noticed that Hui was missing more often, with excuses that never added up. Even the neighbors whispered they had seen Lon and Hui at places no sister-in-law and brother-in-law should ever be. Still, no one spoke openly. No one dared accuse. That was my burden alone. One Sunday evening, I confronted Lon again. She had just returned home, smelling faintly of men's cologne. I stood in the doorway, blocking her path. "Where were you?" I demanded. "At Mother's," she said automatically, her eyes darting away. "Don't lie to me," I growled, my hands trembling. "I saw you. I saw both of you." Her face contorted, her lips curling into a sneer I had never seen before. "Then what? What will you do? Accuse me without proof? Destroy your own marriage because of your twisted jealousy?" Her words cut, sharp and deliberate. For a second, I almost doubted myself. But the memory of Hui's grin, the hotel receipts, the late-night whispers, they all burned in my mind like undeniable scars. I stepped closer, my voice low and deadly. "You think you're clever. You think you can hide it. But when the truth comes out, and it will, I'll be the one standing. Not you, not him." She didn't flinch. She just brushed past me, muttering, "You're pathetic," before disappearing into the bedroom. That night, I lay in the living room, staring at the ceiling, my hands shaking with rage. I realized I was no longer just a husband betrayed. I was a man preparing for war. And if war was what they wanted, then war was what they would get. I began making plans, careful, deliberate plans, not just to catch them, but to catch them where no denial, no excuse, no manipulation could save them. Because I knew now, my wife wasn't just unfaithful. My brother wasn't just a snake. They were building their love in my mother-in-law's house, under the same roof that once blessed my marriage. And when the moment came, I would burn that house of lies to the ground. The day it all nearly came crashing down started like any other, quiet, deceptively normal. But sometimes the calmest mornings lead to the loudest nights. Lon said she would visit her mother again. I didn't argue this time. Instead, I followed, quiet, hidden in the shadow of her lies. I parked 2 blocks away, my hands sweating against the steering wheel. Every beat of my heart felt like a drum. And then, like a scene ripped from a nightmare, I saw Hui's motorcycle already there, leaning casually against the wall outside my mother-in-law's home. I clenched my fists. My teeth ground so hard my jaw ached. I wanted to storm in, break the door down, and drag them both into the street. But some dark part of me whispered, "Not yet. Wait. Watch." So I waited. An hour passed, then another. The curtains swayed, shadows moved, laughter slipped faintly through the cracks. My stomach churned. When Lon finally emerged, she wasn't alone. Hui walked out just minutes after her. They didn't touch, not openly, but the way they looked at each other, the way her smile lingered as she turned away, was enough to rip a man apart. I followed her home. I stayed silent as she slipped off her shoes, humming lightly as though she hadn't just shattered my soul in broad daylight. But that night at dinner, I couldn't hold it in. "Did Mother enjoy the visit?" I asked, my voice sharp. Lon froze for half a second, then smiled thinly. "Of course, she's feeling much better." I slammed my chopsticks down. The sound cracked like thunder across the table. "Don't lie to me, Lon." Her smile vanished. My mother, who had been seated quietly nearby, jumped. "What's going on here?" she demanded. Lon's eyes flicked between us. "He's imagining things again," she said, her voice trembling with false innocence. He thinks I'm—" She stopped herself, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thinks what?" my mother pressed, suspicion flashing in her gaze. "That I'm unfaithful," Lon whispered, choking back sobs. The room fell silent. The words hung heavy in the air. My mother's hand trembled against her bowl. I stood, shaking with rage. "Not thinks, knows. I know what you're doing. I've seen it with my own eyes. Don't you dare pretend." Lon gasped, clutching her chest as though I'd struck her. "You're insane," she cried. "Paranoid. I've sacrificed everything for this family, and this is what I get?" My mother looked at me, her face pale. "Who, son? Who are you accusing her of?" She didn't finish. She didn't have to. The answer was already there, unspoken, burning in her heart. "Hui," I said coldly. "Her lover. My brother." The name shattered the silence in glass. My mother's spoon clattered to the floor. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, it can't be." Lon fell to her knees, wailing. "How could you say that? How could you humiliate me like this in front of your own mother?" But I wasn't looking at her anymore. I was staring at the doorway where, as if summoned by fate, Hui himself appeared. He froze, his eyes wide, his face drained of color. He had walked straight into the fire. For a moment, no one spoke. Then I took a step forward, my voice low, deadly. "Tell me, brother. Tell me right here, in front of our mother,
in front of my wife. Hui's lips parted. His eyes darted from Lan's tear-streaked face to mine. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. Coward, snake, traitor.
My mother stood, her hands trembling. "Answer him, Hui, now!" But Hui didn't answer. He just lowered his head, his silence louder than any confession. Lan screamed, throwing herself at him. "Say something! Don't just stand there!" Her voice cracked with desperation, her mask crumbling before our very eyes. And in that moment, the truth was no longer hidden. It didn't need words. It was written across their faces, in their silence, in their fear. I laughed, a hollow, bitter laugh that echoed through the room. I knew it. I knew I wasn't crazy. My mother collapsed into her chair, her body shaking with sobs. "My children," she wept. "What shame! What betrayal!" Lan turned on me, her tears vanishing into fury. "You think you've won? You think exposing us will make you strong? You're weak. You're pathetic. You don't deserve me, and you never did." Her words cut deeper than knives, but I didn't flinch. Not anymore. I looked at Hui, my own brother, and spat at his feet. "You've already taken what's mine. But hear me, both of you. This isn't over. This is just the beginning." The storm had broken. The truth had spilled. But the war was only starting. I thought the storm had already broken. I thought nothing could hurt me more than watching my wife sob on the floor and my brother standing mute like a guilty child. But I was wrong. That was only the crack before the flood. The real destruction was yet to come. 2 nights later, we were invited to a family gathering at my mother-in-law's house, a birthday celebration for her, a gathering of relatives, cousins, neighbors. Everyone was there, the whole clan under one roof. Lan insisted I come. Her smile was strange, too bright, too desperate. Maybe she thought parading us together in public would patch the cracks, silence the whispers. Maybe she thought I wouldn't dare cause a scene. She was wrong. I went, not to celebrate, but to end it. When we arrived, laughter filled the air, music played, children ran through the courtyard. Plates clinked, wine flowed, voices rose. To anyone else, it was a night of joy. To me, it was a theater, and every actor was blind to the tragedy about to unfold. Lan played the role of perfect wife. She poured drinks, smiled, touched my arm gently, as though we were a picture of harmony. Hui sat across the table, avoiding my eyes, his face pale, his hands fidgeting with his chopsticks. But I had come prepared. For weeks I had been gathering proof, small, hidden pieces, fragments of their treachery. Messages, photos, receipts, recordings. I had kept them buried, waiting for the moment they would cut deepest. Tonight was that moment. Halfway through dinner, when the wine was flowing and voices were loud, I stood. My chair scraped against the floor. The noise cut through the laughter like a blade. "I have something to say," I announced. The chatter died. Dozens of eyes turned to me. My mother-in-law smiled nervously. "Son, what is it? This is a happy night." "No," I said sharply. "This is the night truth comes out." Lan froze beside me. Hui's face drained of the little color he had left. My mother's hand gripped her cup so tight, I thought it might shatter. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolled, then pressed play. The room filled with a voice, Lan's voice, sweet, low, intimate, whispering words she never spoke to me. Words meant for him. I miss you already. When will we see each other again? Tonight was perfect. You make me feel alive in ways he never could. The silence was suffocating. Every person at that table turned, eyes wide, jaws slack. Lon shot to her feet, her face ashen. "That's not me," she screamed. "It's fake. He made it up." I ignored her. I swiped, pulled up photos, grainy but clear enough. Lon and Hui together at a restaurant, his hand brushing hers, her smile brighter than it ever was with me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother-in-law stood, trembling, her lips quivering. "Lon, is this true? Tell me this isn't true." Lon's tears spilled, her voice breaking. "It's lies, all of it. He's trying to destroy me." I slammed the table. Plates jumped, cups spilled. My voice roared over the chaos. "Destroy you? You destroyed me. You destroyed this family when you spread your legs from my brother." The words cracked like thunder. My mother clutched her chest, sobbing. Cousins stared in horror. Neighbors whispered, their faces twisted in shock. And then, finally, Hui stood. His face was hard now, his voice low but steady. "Enough. Stop humiliating her. Yes, it's true. She's mine." The world tilted. The room spun. Even though I had known, even though I had seen, hearing him say it out loud was like a dagger through my chest. Gasps erupted. My mother wailed. My mother-in-law collapsed into her chair, covering her face. Lon ran to him, clutching his arm. "Don't say it! Don't!" But he pulled her close, his eyes locking on mine. "We love each other, and we're done hiding." The crowd exploded. Shouts, accusations, curses flying like arrows. Aunts screamed, uncles cursed, cousins dragged children away from the chaos. I laughed, loud, broken, manic. "Love? You call that love? You think stealing my wife, betraying your own brother, tearing our family apart is love?" Lon glared at me, venom dripping from her words. "You never satisfied me. You were weak, a husband in name only. I stayed with you out of pity. But Hui, he gave me everything you couldn't." The words sliced me open. I wanted to strike her, to strike him, to burn the house to the ground. But instead, I stood tall, my voice like ice. "Enjoy your victory," I spat, "because it ends tonight. You may have each other, but you will never have peace. Not in this family, not in this life." My mother collapsed into sobs, screaming at them both, calling them monsters, traitors, curses flying from her lips. Relatives dragged her away, their faces burning with shame. The humiliation was complete, the betrayal undeniable. And as Lon clung to Hui, sobbing and trembling, I turned and walked out, my chest hollow, my heart a furnace of rage. The night air hit me like cold water. Behind me, chaos still raged, but I was done with words. The proof had been laid bare. The family had seen. The masks were gone. And deep inside, one thought burned brighter than all the pain. This isn't over. My revenge hasn't even begun. The next morning, the air in the neighborhood was heavy with whispers. Word of last night's eruption had spread faster than wildfire. I couldn't step outside without feeling eyes on me, some filled with pity, others with disbelief, but all carrying the same question. How could this happen? Lon and Hui had vanished before the night was over. Some said they left the house together. Others claimed they were hiding in shame at a relative's home. But wherever they were, they couldn't hide from the truth anymore. Their secret wasn't a secret. It was a stain smeared across every corner of our family's name. My phone buzzed relentlessly with calls and messages, some from relatives demanding answers, some offering comfort, others pretending concern, but really just thirsty for gossip. I ignored them all. Let them talk. Let them choke on the details. The more they spread it, the deeper the wound cut into Lan and Hui's pride. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like relief. Not happiness, not peace, but a strange calm that came with knowing I no longer needed to carry the weight of silence. Everyone knew. The burden was theirs now, not mine. But the storm hadn't ended. It was only beginning. By the second day, my mother-in-law came to me. Her face was pale, her hair disheveled, her voice trembling. "Son," she whispered, her hands clutching mine, "forgive her. Forgive them. This family cannot survive such shame. Please, stay silent now. Stop feeding the flames." I pulled my hands away. My voice was cold as stone. "Forgive? Tell me, Mother, would you forgive if your husband slept with your sister? Would you forgive if the child you raised spat in your face and declared her loyalty to the one who betrayed you?" She wept, collapsing at my feet. But I felt nothing. No sympathy, no mercy. She had raised a daughter who was capable of this. She had raised a daughter who brought ruin to my name. This was her punishment, as much as it was theirs. Lan tried to call me the third night. I let it ring, again and again, until the sound became a cruel melody in the empty house. Then I answered, not with words, but with silence. She begged through the line, her voice breaking. "Please, don't do this. Don't turn the whole world against me. I made a mistake, but I still love you. I swear it. Let's forget it all. Start again. Don't destroy me." I laughed. The sound must have chilled her blood, because she fell silent. When I finally spoke, my voice was softer than a whisper, yet sharper than a knife. "You destroyed yourself the moment you chose him. I don't need to lift a finger. The world is already tearing you apart." And I hung up. From that day, the consequences unfolded like dominoes. Hui's job was the first to collapse. His employer, a distant relative, had heard the scandal. "A man who betrays his own brother cannot be trusted," the old man said. Within a week, Hui was dismissed. Lan fared no better. Her friends avoided her, their polite smiles brittle, their eyes cold. The same women who once admired her now whispered behind her back, laughing at her fall. Invitations dried up, respect evaporated. She became a shadow haunting her own life. I did not need to orchestrate much. Their own actions had poisoned their world. All I had to do was stand back and watch. That was my revenge. Slow, steady, merciless. Meanwhile, I moved forward. Divorce papers were filed. My lawyer made sure everything was airtight. The house, the assets, most of it remained with me. She left with little more than her clothes and her shame. The day she signed the papers, she looked at me one last time. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her lips trembling. "You'll regret this," she whispered. "One day, you'll realize I was the only one who truly loved you." I leaned close, my voice so low only she could hear. "Love? You wouldn't recognize love if it bled in front of you. What you gave me wasn't love. It was poison." She flinched, as though struck, and for the first time, I saw the truth in her eyes. Fear. Not fear of me, but fear of the emptiness she had chosen. Days turned to weeks. Hui and Lan tried to build a life together, but it was hollow. Without family, without friends, without the acceptance of the community, they were exiles in their own hometown. I would hear whispers of their struggles, arguments in public, unpaid bills, desperate pleas for help that went unanswered. And me? I rose from the ashes. The same people who once pitied me now looked at me with admiration. They said I had endured the unimaginable and come out stronger. They said betrayal had sharpened me, made me wiser. Some even envied my resolve. But inside, the scars remained. At night, when the house was quiet and the world outside had forgotten the drama, I would still feel the sting of her words, the echo of his betrayal. Yet even in the darkness, I clung to one truth. They had not destroyed me. I was still standing. They were the ones crumbling. And I swore to myself, as I stared into the mirror one sleepless night, that I would never again be blind, never again trust so blindly. My pain had forged me into something unbreakable. Or so I thought. Because just as the dust seemed to settle, just as I began to breathe without bitterness, a new shadow crept into my life, one I had not expected. A message, a knock at the door, a whisper of a secret still buried. The story wasn't finished yet. It has been nearly 2 years since the night my world collapsed, and yet sometimes, in the silence of my room, I still hear the echoes of their betrayal. Betrayal doesn't vanish with time. It doesn't fade like a bruise. It becomes part of you, a scar etched so deep into your soul that even when you've moved on, you carry it. I am no longer the man I was then. That version of me, the husband who trusted too easily, the brother who believed blood was unbreakable, died on the night I discovered their secret. What rose from the ashes was someone harder, colder, sharper. Someone who learned that even the people closest to you could become your executioners. Lan and Hui did not survive the storm they created. Their so-called love, built on betrayal and secrecy, could not withstand the weight of reality. They moved away, or perhaps they were chased away. It didn't matter. Word reached me that their relationship had soured within months. The passion they once used to justify their sins burned out quickly, replaced by bitterness, arguments, and blame. Hui, stripped of work and respect, turned to drinking. Lan, once admired, once envied, now lived in obscurity, a woman carrying a reputation she could never erase. I didn't celebrate their downfall. I didn't need to. Their suffering wasn't my victory. It was their destiny. They chose their path, and it led them here. The truth is, revenge wasn't sweet. It was hollow, because no matter how much they lost, I couldn't get back what they stole from me. My peace, my trust, my belief in family. And yet, I wasn't broken. I rebuilt myself, slowly, painfully. I focused on work, on creating a new future that didn't depend on anyone else's loyalty.
I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage, people who reminded me of who I used to be. I started taking care of myself, both body and mind, because I realized that if I didn't fight for my own healing, no one else would. There were nights I thought of Lan not with longing, but with a strange kind of pity. She had everything: a husband who loved her, a family that welcomed her, a home filled with trust. And she threw it all away for a forbidden thrill. She mistook betrayal for love. She mistook destruction for freedom. And in the end,
she was left with nothing. Sometimes I would see her in the market, her head lowered, her eyes darting nervously, as if every whisper around her was about her. I never approached. I never spoke a word. She was a ghost to me. Hui, I hadn't seen since he fled. To me, he no longer existed. The greatest revenge I realized was not in destroying them, but in outliving them, outshining them, and proving to the world that their betrayal did not define me. And so I lived. I tell you this story not to drown you in my pain, but to warn you. Betrayal often comes from where you least expect it. We build our lives around the belief that family protects us, that love binds us, that marriage secures us. But those walls are fragile. It takes only one lie, one touch, one secret to bring them crashing down. Do not be blind. Do not give your trust away so freely that you cannot survive when it's shattered. But also, do not let betrayal destroy you. If you are listening to this now, if you've been through something similar, I want you to hear me. You can survive it. You can rebuild. You can rise stronger than before. Because in the end, betrayal is not the end of your story. It is only a chapter. My chapter with Lon and Hui closed the night I signed those divorce papers. My chapter with pain closed the day I realized I no longer cared whether they sank or swam. And now I write new chapters, ones that belong only to me. So if there is one message I leave you with, let it be this. Loyalty is the rarest gift, and once broken, it can never be restored. Value those who protect it, and never beg for it from those who don't. And with that, my story ends not with fire, not with revenge, but with silence. A silence heavier than any scream, because sometimes the most powerful answer you can give to betrayal is to walk away and live.